All right, so back to the story. I'm gonna get hopefully in later lectures into some really interesting stuff about when I was a communist in 2013 and my viewpoints and everything. And like I said, I think the reason why I was most inclined to that was because I always saw the right wingers and the Nazis as the most biggest threat to the Jews. And like Fox News, I always thought that they were the biggest threat to the Jews. So and they the right wingers tended to be against communism. So I wanted to be a communist, and I wanted to destroy the right wingers and destroy the white people because I saw them as the biggest threat to the Jews. But as my grandpa says, the good I would, I do not; that which I would not, I end up doing. I was in dualistic software, my grandpa would say, and I wasn't in the flow. So, as I said, at this time, 2020, my grandpa and I get in an argument, and I kind of resented my grandpa because, and this is what he said, that's what he said about me, that I resented him, and that's why he wouldn't teach me. And it was because like I felt that he messed up, and his whole thing of like make Ryan independent so that he could be a part of the synergy, and he could transcend the ego by working in everything, and in creative projects and all that. And I was like, dude, if you guys would have supported me instead, because his whole thing, my mom and dad misinterpreted as throw Ryan to the side. But I was like, if you would have helped, and if you could continue to get mom and dad to talk to me and support me, I can get back into basketball, which my grandpa said is a part of synergy. I can get into my rap music. I could have been doing big stuff. I could have been making a lot of money doing rap, basketball, doing a lot of stuff. If I had my mom and dad talking to me, if I could talk to them and I could have some support. But I was like, but you're the one who messed it up. So, but my grandpa stopped teaching me. So then in my Based on True Story book that I wrote after that, to try to get my grandpa to teach me again, I tried to be like transcend dualistic software. But again, I didn't understand what my grandpa meant and tried to be in the flow. So I'm thinking that means race mixing. So I'm talking like I'm trying to make the black guys to be awesome, thinking that I'm transcending the ego and I'm for race mixing. And I'm saying like, the black man has just been traumatized, and basically like I've been traumatized. And, maybe I acted out and I acted bad, but just because of my trauma, and I'm an innocent victim. But my grandpa would say, no, it's your software. It's if I was boasting, I'm still focused on the self, but it's my software. But I was an innocent victim, and like the black people, they're the natural man, and the white people destroyed them, and they're traumatized. And if it wasn't for the white man, and the black man would be awesome, and because of the trauma, and then because of the trauma, the black man acts out, and then the white man says, see, he's bad, but it's really just because of trauma, and I want to make them the victims, and make myself into a victim. And then I want to make, so basically I had a Marxist diatribe, a Marxist book, and also in the book I was saying, that the story of Cain and Abel, like my grandpa would say, Cain represents the agriculturists, Abel represents the nomadic sheep herders, because Cain gives the wheat and Abel gives the meat for the sacrifice. And Cain killing Abel, that's a common theme in a lot of mythologies. Like even in Greek mythology, they have the killing of, I forget the guy's name, but they also have a story that is metaphorical. They have a few that are metaphorical of the agricultural revolution, of the agriculturalists killing the herders, the nomads and stuff. And you see that in a lot of mythologies. But damn, I can't remember what the name of the guy is. But I know in that there's a story of Tammuz, which is in the Middle Eastern mythology. Tammuz was a metaphor of the agricultural revolution. And even the story of in Gilgamesh, they have Enkidu being killed was a metaphor of the agricultural revolution, the killing of the nomad and everything. But anyways, I wanted to see the nomads as the good ones, because I see the nomads as more related to the black people, and they're the ones who were killed, and they're the victims, so they're good. And that Cain was the bad agriculturalist, and that's the white man. And I wanted to race mix, and Abel's the original man, the natural man, and the white man messes things up, like my dad and my grandpa, who are white, and they mess me up with the shoot away machine because they're not natural, and because I had a anti-white agenda because I saw myself as Jewish. And so I basically insidiously, covertly put that in my books and I was trying to make I was trying to make the white people hate themselves, So they, the white women hate white men and love the natural black man who is the victim, and make the white women feel like they're victims. Like I said in my book, Metapsychiatry, that I wrote in like 2015, I was talking like, basically my thesis was that black people were victims, and they're the original man. They're the original people, and there's kind of an Oedipal complex in that, and that the white man is the sons of the black people because they emerged from the black people, and then they want to kill the black people, like the son wants to kill the father. And the same thing with schizophrenics. According to the Julian Jaynes bicameral mind theory, everybody was once schizophrenic, but then the sane people emerged from the schizophrenics, and they started to kill the schizophrenics, and it makes the schizophrenics into the good guys. And I wanted to be like, and you see how the black people, they rap and stuff, and they like, and I was showing the rap music, how black people kind of act insane. And I was like, yeah, that's the consequence of trauma. Kind of like schizophrenics, they act insane, and schizophrenics even rhyme a lot, and they make up words like black people rhyme a lot and make up words and stuff. And I'm like, basically it's the same type of dynamic, and that is due to the trauma and because they're the originals, and basically it's just a Marxist diatribe, making the victim into the good guy. And I wanted race mixing, and I wanted to subvert everything and uproot everything, and because I wanted to destroy society and make the white people mix. I saw the white people as the biggest threat to Jews, but then at this time, like when I wrote my based on true story book, like I was trying to say, my grandpa would say, because Cain says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And then God says to Cain, he doesn't say anything. And my grandpa, so most people think, oh yeah, well, of course you're your brother's keeper. You shouldn't have killed your brother, Cain. But according to my grandpa, God protects Cain. He gives him a mark on his forehead. And according to my grandpa, you're not your brother's keeper. And this is kind of, but I remember I was thinking to myself, well, my grandpa, he tried to make me independent, and he's anti-communist. He's just like a Nazi. And I didn't like my grandpa's idea. And I was like, my grandpa, how come you can't see that your ideas of being against welfare are Nazi? That's white supremacist, and that's not the flow, grandpa. That's what I wanted to think, because I didn't understand the flow. I didn't understand that this was, I was not in the flow, that I saw myself as Jewish and I wanted to destroy the white people, and I had an ego agenda. And I couldn't see things as they truly are. But my grandpa was trying to open me to this idea that giving isn't necessarily the flow. Like, somebody can give, and because he wants, my grandpa calls it the social welfare gospel, where people think, and you even see it in Judaism, the Tikkun Olam, where a lot of Jews think that, okay, if I give, then I'll be loved by God. But they're still thinking of themselves as a separate being, and God is a separate being that they can satisfy and give pleasure to by giving. Oh, I'm going to be a good boy, and then I go to heaven. I give to the poor. And my grandpa says, again, it's kind of a Marxist ideology, but my grandpa says there is no formula for the flow. But I'll get to this. And then the same thing with like the Christians, are like the social welfare gospel, like, okay, if we just give a lot, then maybe we'll please God and we'll go to heaven. But my grandpa would say that they're focused on saving the self. They're still focused on the ego. They still want to save themselves, but there's no formula for the flow. And my grandpa says the only benefit of giving, and even I studied this with a rabbi, and the rabbi said the same thing, and the sages said the same stuff when I was in San Diego, and he was saying that giving, it does help you to let go of your attachments. And my grandpa says it helps you get into the flow, and that's kind of what the rabbi said too. I'm gonna get to that, how I would study with these different groups, and they would kind of teach the same stuff my grandpa was teaching. So I started, that gave me more confirmation that my grandpa was accurate in what he taught, that my grandpa was getting to something profound. And I'll get to that more about how I talked to rabbis and stuff, and my grandpa's teachings kind of corresponded. So I was like, okay, this is legit. But basically, my grandpa would be like, no, you're not your brother's keeper. You're your brother's brother. But I didn't want to believe that, because I'm like, that's white supremacist. You should want to give welfare. That's dualistic software, grandpa. You can't see that. So I'm writing my book like that. My grandpa just doesn't get it. My grandpa thinks that giving welfare and it being your brother's brother is not the flow and stuff. I'm like, no, it is the flow. You should, because I'm like, because the black people, they're traumatized. So you should want to give to the black people because they've been traumatized and they need extra help. And same thing with me. Like, I've been traumatized by the shoot away machine and the abuse that I went through, and I need extra help. And it might be true in my case, I need extra help, because I did discover the theory of everything and stuff. But I tried to, basically I had an ego agenda because I always had that like anti-white Jewish thing. So, but I'm like basically saying like, yeah, but my Based on True Story book was just a Marxist communist manifesto. And basically I was just like, they do need extra help. And like, same thing with like schizophrenics. Like they don't need to be mistreated and thrown into psych wards. They should just be given extra love, because the reason why they become schizophrenics is because and there might be some accuracy to it, right? And yeah, of course there's some accuracy to the black thing too. Like, it's not beneficial to treat people poorly. And even me, yeah, it's not beneficial to treat me poorly. But I'm like, I remember my friend Noah. My friend Noah said like, in an African society, and Noah's kind of communist a little bit, but he was like, in an African society, instead of putting people in jail, they put him in the center of a circle and they all tell them how much they love him. And that's if he commits a crime. And again, I like that idea because I'm like, oh yeah, so we should let all the black people and brown people out of jail, and we'll destroy the white race. That's what I wanted, So I was like, in my books I would write like, yeah, and I misused my grandpa's teachings, because my grandpa would be like, yeah, you don't want to hurt anybody, and you do want people to reform. So when you send people to jail, you don't want to hurt them, because that's dualistic predator-prey software. But I misinterpreted it, because I'm like, but my grandpa would say there's no flow. Sometimes putting people in jail helps protect them from themselves and helps protect others from people who are trapped and who are stuck in lower levels of software, dualistic software that's self-confirmatory, that hurts them and hurts others and gets people, but there's no formula. But I wanted to be like, no, we should, instead of like putting people in jail, let them all go and just tell them how much you love them and just give them more stuff. If we would just give the poor, it's all the white man's fault. If it's because of social dynamics, it's Marxism. If the reason why they commit crimes is because they're poor, and if we would just give them more money, they wouldn't commit crimes. And same thing with the black people. The only reason why they're bad is because we don't love them enough. And same thing with and that's the way I was trying to argue in my Marxist manifesto. And there's some accuracy to it. Like, I think it would be helpful if my mom and dad treated me with more respect and talked to me, and it would have been helpful. And maybe there's some accuracy in all these cases, but I had an ego agenda and I wasn't in the flow. I was trying to destroy the white race. And, but regardless, I was like, my grandpa doesn't understand. And I read this book, and it was a book written by some brown guys. And it's like, and in this book, the guys were saying how, if you give people welfare and stuff and money, they don't spend it on drugs that much, and they don't spend it on negative things. They spend it on food and stuff like that. And we should give more money to the poor and open the borders and give money and give. But again, I had an ego agenda, but I made it seem like, I'm sinister with it. I make it seem like I'm so compassionate. And, but no, I always had an ego agenda. I always had an anti-white agenda. But I don't let people know that, because I'm sinister with it. I was always sinister with it. And it's kind of fucked up. And I think that I might have fucked up the world a lot, because then I think that I influenced a lot of people, because I made some books, and all my books were like that. And all my books were sinister. And I think that it probably, I don't know, maybe Angela Merkel was reading my books and she was like, oh, wow, this boy, he's so compassionate. We should let in all the Arabs and, I bet, who knows who was reading my books. But regardless, they weren't in the flow. My grandpa would say it's not anybody's fault. They just weren't in the flow, and they were susceptible to being manipulated, because because my grandpa would say virtue signaling and trying to be good because you think that that's a good thing to do because it makes you feel good. That's still not the flow. You're still in the ego. You're not in the flow, transcending the self to see the truth, to see what is most perfect. But regardless, I did a communist manifesto, and I'm like, yeah, we should, my grandpa doesn't get it. You should be your brother's keeper, not your brother's brother. You should be your brother's keeper. He doesn't understand. But my grandpa did understand, I think, because now I see that was my ego. I was trying to do a formula, and I had an ego agenda. But regardless, and I'll get to that, how I started to figure that out more later. But yeah, and I was basically talking about how I felt that I wrote my Based on True Story book, how I felt like my grandpa was a Nazi in the way he treated me, and that I felt like he influenced my mom and dad to not see me and stuff, because my grandpa would be like, if he just gets a job, then he'd be out of ally enemy software, because if you're dependent on people, then you're an ally enemy software and they resent you, and if they do what you want, then they're your ally. And if they don't, then you're your enemy. And that's dualistic software. And that's why you need to be independent. But I was like, well, maybe if you guys would have helped me and give me some support, then I would be independent. And I tried to do the same, and I tried to say the same thing about the black people. And same thing with the black people. If we would just help them more, then they wouldn't be doing bad things. You know, it's all the white man's fault type of stuff, right? Because I always had that sinister agenda to try to mix the races. But so basically I was saying all that stuff. And then I think that my mom and dad read my books because I would write all my stuff online. And then so my mom, when I called my mom and I'm like, Mom, can I please see you guys? Then my mom started to like, I think she internalized and she even like embraced what I was writing. And my mom was like, well, why don't you just get a fucking job, you fucking loser? But she still wouldn't talk to me, even if I got a job, because I did get a job later. And she still was like, well, we're still never going to talk to you. We're still never going to see you. But she's like, but then she just internalized that. And instead of like changing her ways and being like, maybe we should talk to him and be nice to him. She's like, she embraced it. And then she's like, you should just get a fucking job. You know, you're just a fucking leech. You're a parasite. But my grandpa even says, my grandpa's like, see, so I tell my grandpa later, because my grandpa started teaching me again. And I was like, you know, my mom calls me a parasite and stuff. He's like, yeah, your mom's she's not immature, but she expresses a lot of immaturity. Because that's not her, but she expresses a lot of immaturity, very predator-prey software. You should stop being, you're such a fucking leech. I don't want anything to do with you. She has a lot of hostility toward me, a lot of hatred toward me. And it stems from the shoot-away machine, from that time. Like I said, my mom loved me growing up. But once the shoot-away machine stuff happened, oh my God, what's wrong with you? You fucking can't handle the pressure? And then she just turned on me. And then when I finally, after college, I tried to tell her it was a shoot-away machine. Oh, it wasn't a shoot-away. You're just a fucking schizophrenic. You started getting mentally ill back then. And the fact was, I was never mentally ill. I discovered the theory of everything. But she's like, you didn't discover the theory of everything. You're just a fucking schizophrenic freak loser. And then, so at this point in 2023, she's just like, you're just a fucking parasite. Why don't you get a job, you fucking loser? Can I please talk to you and Dad, Mom? I just want to see you and Dad. No! Why don't you just get a fucking job, you loser? So, because I think that she read my books where I was trying to say, you know, I was trying to say, to take the communist stance and be like, you know, and basically I wanted to talk to my mom and dad, but my mom interpreted it. I would try to make my grandpa into a bad guy, into a Nazi, which he wasn't, but, you know, he says that my mom and dad just misinterpreted his teachings. But then my mom misinterpreted it more. And then my mom's like, oh, so his grandpa thinks that it is justifiable to not talk to him. Okay. And it's because he doesn't have a job. Okay. So I'm going to embrace that, and I'm going to internalize that, and I'm going to really become that. So when I would talk to my mom, she'd be like, no, we're never going to talk to you. You can't force things. And plus, you should just get a fucking job, you fucking loser. Hang up on me, you know? So, but anyways, I went back to being a leftist, anti-white. And I'm going to describe how that ended up backfiring on me in the next lecture.